and welcome again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. These podcasts are presented to help explore the impact of the longevity revolution in our congregations and our community. And we invite you to visit our website, jewishsacredaging.com, and the Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. If you'd like to send a comment or a concern to me regarding the program or suggestions, send it to Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. And with great pleasure, we welcome to the Seekers of Meaning microphone, Rabbi Stanley M. Davids, the editor, one of the editors of a brand new CCAR book, Deepening the Dialogue, Jewish Americans and Israelis Envisioning the Jewish Democratic State. A very, very powerful book, a collection of a variety of different essays, really riffing on the Declaration of Independence from the State of Israel, and extremely timely given the recent emerging issues in American Jewish and American Israeli relations, the so-called peace plan, the elections, all this stuff. Stanley, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. Nice to see you. How you doing?
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much. So I'm going to preempt for a moment and just thank you, Richard, for the incredible work you're doing, helping all kinds of people ease their way through transitions in life.
Well, thank you
for that.
Thank you. Well, speaking of transitions, this book is a lot about the transition. There's a real transition going on within our relationship and the American Jewish community with the State of Israel. Stanley, talk to me about the development of this book. I know our colleague John Rosove, who did a podcast on one of his books for us last year. What was the motivation of this book?
The motivation for the book was a realization that not only is there increasing separation and confusion between American Jews and Israeli Jews as to what is needed to hold the Jewish people together worldwide, but there has been an enormous breakdown in communication. We aren't playing well together in the sandbox. We can't talk easily with each other. And the problems are filtering down throughout society. I live here in Los Angeles. I see it all the time in terms of communities that will not speak with each other. And something has to be done to break the logjam, a different approach, a new approach. I tried it with the first book I published through the CCAR press 3 years ago, but in some ways that was almost an old-fashioned way. It became clear that we need to work as partners on problems we understand and share concern for. And that's not been done before. So that's why we brought together, the term is going to be collaboration. That's why we brought together a group of Israeli influencers, public intellects, social activists with their peers and counterparts in the United States and asked, are there things that we can do together, A, to break down the barriers of misunderstanding, and B, to chart a useful, pragmatic approach to repairing things going into the future? And that's what I think our book tries to do.
Well, the book really starts out with this very powerful essay from Rabbis Noah Satah and Judith Schindler about, they title it, Overcoming the Loneliness We Feel. And the idea, the use of the term loneliness in the relationship of the American Jewish community and the Israeli community, it's a very interesting use of the term. Unpack that for me a little bit, loneliness.
Okay, what does it mean to be lonely? You can be lonely, David Reisman, you can be lonely in a crowd. Right. You can be lonely when surrounded by people. You can be lonely in a mass of people supporting a similar goal. The loneliness comes from lack of clarity in terms of language, the words we use. Secondly, lack of clarity in terms of the values in which we are trying to work. And this loneliness It can be very, very destructive. Let me give you an example. We want to talk about democracy. Oh, everyone likes democracy, Richard. That's a cool thing. We are for democracy. But what's democracy? When Americans use democracy, they are thinking about the need to protect the individual against the coercive power of majorities. That's the kind of democracy that grew up here and has made America strong. When most Israelis speak of the word democracy, they are speaking about the collective, the need of the collective to protect itself against the tyranny of the minority. That's about 180 degrees apart. In Israel, creating a Jewish state, Jewish feelings, Jewish vision, Jewish values. In the United States, talking about the need to protect individual rights, individual concerns. So when Israelis and Americans sit down and talk about democracy, of course they're alone, because they're not speaking the same language. They're using words, and the words have dramatically different meanings. We have to come to understand that.
Well, you write in the beginning of the book, and I think in the introduction, this quote: the guiding question for our new editorial team was, quote, what are the core challenges confronting Israel as it struggles to be both a Jewish and a democratic state? And that's inherent in a lot of the essays trying to unpack the meaning of the Declaration of Independence. And that's a theme, isn't it, throughout all these essays?
The structural format is, since Israel has no constitution, Israel has basic laws, Israel has Knesset passed laws, no constitution. The only thing that has been agreed upon in Israel as a document detailing the values of Israel is Megillat Ha'atzmaut, the Declaration of Independence. So we went to the Declaration of Independence and mined it for its key values. Then we divided those values up between members of a partnership team, Israeli and American. How is Israel doing with gender equality? How is Israel doing with protecting the rights of minorities? How is Israel doing in making a religiously pluralistic country? And instead of looking for cute ways to criticize, while all the time saying, oh, we love Israel, but all these things are wrong, look to the core values, try to figure out how Israel is doing in pursuit of those values, and then, and here's the key part, Richard, can we find a way to create partnership, collaborative working groups, projects to enhance those values which stand at the core of Israel's life? That's our approach. And it has been a challenging, enervating, fascinating, and ultimately hopeful kind of a thing. We no longer, and this was hard to detail to the CCR press, I'm thankful for their understanding, the goal isn't to sell books. Heresy. Okay, heresy. The goal isn't to sell books. The goal is to lay out ways in which partnership teams can work together to build Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, knowing that the word Jewish is anomalous, that has all different kinds of meanings. And as I pointed out, democratic is not simply obvious on the core. And so we are looking at the book as the launch of a project, not as an effort to sell a certain number of volumes.
Could this book be used as a vehicle within a congregation or an organization for adult education to spur those dialogues and to spur those communal and cooperative projects? Is that one of the goals that you want to do?
Thanks. Yes, absolutely. I witnessed several years ago a Passover Seder conducted online, Zoom, between members of an American Reform congregation and members of an Israeli synagogue Reform community. And those people at opposite ends of the Zoom were sharing together in a Seder that they had jointly prepared and then celebrated Pesach together. This stuff can happen. It can happen at the grassroots. It can happen internationally. And one of the things that is so heartening about this project is that we really do have support of the Reform movement in moving it forward. It's going to take effort. It's going to take dollars. It's going to take will. But it can start at the grassroots. It can start in congregations. People can begin, for example, have a study group around the Megillah, around the Declaration of Independence. What does it mean? What values are compelling to you? And would you like to be involved with an Israeli community that shares those values, not to chat about them, but to figure out ways to enhance them on the ground, to strengthen them? The goal is a partnership to strengthen Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. We are in this together.
Do you have experience with any of these groups yet now forming in congregations, these partnership groups?
No, the answer is no. The book was launched at the biennial.
Right.
And we are in the process now, and Judy Schindler is chairing that process, moving to the next stage to create the environment for all those. The language that we're trying to use, we've created kind of not a logo, social justice Zionism. We're looking for a different kind of Zionist movement, a Zionist movement which is focused not just on bland tikkun, but a reshaping of society in light of shared social justice concerns. When we have an occupation, can we have social justice values based upon the Declaration of Independence? When we have one of the chapters in the book written by an Arab Palestinian Israeli, and that person is asking, how can you expect to build a democratic society if you don't understand how I, the Arab Palestinian Israeli, view Nakba? Nakba, the Arabic term, meaning misfortune, which they apply to the War of Independence, 1948. We have to learn to understand each other's language, and we have to be willing to buy into the possibility, real possibility, that instead of just standing off at the side and criticizing, we can join a movement of positive, affirmative, collaborative change. Those congregational programs will be launching in the next few months.
Stanley, given the realities of what's happening in the world, given the realities, its political realities between this country and Israel, and the division even denominationally within this country, this seems to be a daunting, overwhelming task. Where's the infrastructure to carry out the desires and the dreams that you're talking about in the book? Or is that infrastructure still to be developed?
We want to do better than that, Richard. Infrastructure gave me a little bit of a shiver. Infrastructure means somebody coordinating, working, doing for a specific goal. All of a sudden you have a new organization. We're going to build a building and have dues and all that'll be accepted. No. We are looking for grassroots participation. We are looking for communities, Our job is to be shidduchin, to make matches, and to put teams together. We don't want to run. We don't want to overall, we want to make it possible. We are looking to have staff set up in Israel and in the United States. We're going to have to make this happen. But the staff is to help communities rise up and say, you know what? We not only love Israel, but as American Jews, we know that the American Jewish community would be dramatically impaired if Israel doesn't hold on to both horns of Jewish and democratic. And the other part, which is not so visible, we have to help Israelis understand why it is important for them that there is a vibrant American liberal Jewish community tied to Israel. Richard, that is not muvan me'elav. That is not self-understood in Israel. It is astonishing that figures indicate that perhaps 35% of Israelis, based on a Chidush poll, 35% of Israelis don't want American Jews involved in their internal domestic issues such as religious pluralism, marriage rights, freedom of expression, none of those things. They don't see this group yet, how their future and our future are dramatically intertwined. We have to change the perceptions of reality by working at the lowest levels of community and building a larger group of people who understand that we have a single fate.
Is part of that hope for success tied to the rise of, for want of a better term, progressive Judaism in Israel? I mean, we had Rick Jacobs on a previous podcast in January, and he writes in the book also that my sense is that one of the hoped for responses is based upon this gradual rise in people identifying with progressive Judaism institutionally within Israel. Is that part of what you're looking for?
I'm going to have to answer this carefully because I am part, and I am a proud card-carrying member of the Reform movement, and also an Israeli citizen and an American citizen. I am totally committed to the future growth of the Israel movement for progressive Judaism, period, full stop. It is growing. It represents probably 8 to 9% of the Israeli population that currently self-identifies as Reform. Fabulous. Add the conservatives, you come up to about 13%. You talk about the Haredim in Israel, they represent some 10%. We have a growing presence, growing number of congregations. They must be strengthened. But look, in the book, you have a great thought leader like Dr. Ruth Gavasson. There is no one who is better known in Israel as a legal expert on the rights, civil rights, domestic rights of Israelis. She was blocked from an appointment to the Israeli Supreme Court because she was viewed as too much of an activist within the social justice community. But she doesn't self-identify as a Reform Jew. There is a huge community in Israel willing to identify with what we're trying to do here. Do I want them part of the IMPJ? Yeah. But is the goal focused on the IMPJ? Not necessarily. It's bigger than that. Am I going to get shot for that response?
No,
I don't know.
I hope not. Because we still have things to talk about.
Okay.
In one of the essays, Eric, Rabbi Alfie, past president of the URJ, has this very interesting essay on the basic law that was passed 2018.
Nation state.
The theme of that essay seems it makes it harder to develop these bridges. Do you agree with that?
You know, putting a book together with authors in Israel and in the United States meant that I spent a great deal of time, don't cry, at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning here in California, talking to my Israeli friends, writers, and so forth in Israel. It's very, very interesting. Eric and Ruth Gavasson were the poster people for collaboration. They talked back and forth on their assigned topic. Ruth even came to New York and met with Eric. They sat, they talked, and they disagreed. Eric believes that the Megillat Ha'atzmaut, the Declaration of Independence, should be put into one of the basic laws of Israel. It's not law right now. It's aspirational. But if we put it, or they put it into law, it then would have more impact. Ruth, as a social activist in Israel, doesn't believe that that's the right approach. She wants more social change, grassroots and up, and a variety of other activities. The nation-state law is viewed in so many circles today as pernicious and not necessary. It was passed for political purposes, not for the purpose of healing, developing, strengthening Israeli society. Israel has a population, 20% of Arabs. They're full Israeli citizens. We didn't need a nation-state law to witness the degrading of the role of Arabic in Israeli national life. We just didn't need that. So we're going to have to do what I think the Palestinian Israelis before the birth of the state, during World War II and up to 48 did. They fought with the British as if the British were not occupiers, unfriendly in Palestine, Canaan, Israel. And they also fought the British to be able to establish a Jewish state. We're going to have to live with the fact of the nation-state law, which I regard as a blunder, and work behind it and around it as if it's not really there. We have other things to work about.
I mean, you allude to the political, like you're saying the law was passed for political reasons, and we're very familiar with that here. But it seems to me that the desire to develop these value-based connections runs smack into the political realities or necessities in Israel, and even to a point in the United States. How do we work around that confrontation to achieve a higher goal in this overcoming the loneliness, to channel that opening essay?
We have to learn to speak with each other, and speaking with each other, Richard, as you so well know from a career of helping people do this, is to be able to communicate what we are really saying and really feeling. Israelis look at the Rabbanut, for example, the chief rabbinate, as something understandable, but just get out of my life, right? I understand. Actually, I'm not going to vote to get rid of it. I just don't want to deal with it. I'm going to get married elsewhere. I'm going to do a divorce. I'm going to do it elsewhere. But I understand why it's there. Americans look at church state and break out in theoretical hives. Now, we have to be able to find ways to work on projects to defend human rights, religious pluralism, and do it in a way in which there is understanding of both perspectives. We don't view the world the same way, and we don't have to. But we share a vision, at least many of us do, that there can be something which never existed in the world before, a state that is Jewishly pluralistic and, in the most modern sense, democratic, responsive to history and traditions and to changing conditions. And what we're trying to do is to stimulate thought leaders and social progressives to come back to the Zionist struggle and to realize that with their involvement, we can shape a future. The book sets that out as a possibility. The social justice Zionism sets that out. We can really do something far more positive, far more productive. And by the way, God forbid there should be additional positive outcomes. We can lower the concern of progressive Jews in this country, United States, about what's going on in Israel. If we can demonstrate that caring, liberal, progressive American Jews and counterparts in Israel are actually working on transforming Israeli society and strengthening the values of the Declaration of Independence, we can at least lower the rhetoric of concern. And that's a goal, too.
That's a great goal. But it leads me to another question that I find as I travel the country and has been written about. Look, our demographic for seekers of meaning and Jewish sacred aging really revolves around baby boomers and our families. We remember the 67 war, the Yom Kippur War. It was these events were formative in our generation's support of this state of Israel. Yet we're hearing now that there is this drop-off with Gen Xers, millennials, the same type of affinity and support for the state of Israel doesn't exist in these other generations. Walk me through how this proposal that you're elucidating now can reach these other generations who perhaps their experience in the media with Israel is very, very different from ours. And maybe even when they go to Israel, if they go, is very different than from ours. How do we begin to bridge that?
If I knew the precise answer to the question, I would immediately go out and publish another book, and this time retain the rights, and I would retire happily.
But having said that,
a little moment of historical clarity. The Reform movement with the Columbus platform, what was it, 1937?
37, right.
Yeah, supposedly embraced Zionism. Well, that's not actually true. The Reform movement in 1937, looking at what was going on in Europe and Germany, embraced the need for a safe place for Jewish families running from the horror to have a secure homeland. That's preserving the family. People rushed to call it. The Reform movement became Zionist. I don't accept that as a description. Then moved to 67. I remember 67 as yesterday. Unfortunately, I remember that much better than yesterday. Did that event of incredible pride make us Zionists? And what does the word Zionist mean? It was euphoria. And that euphoria, as with every euphoria, was destined to end. We can't go back and try to reclaim. Look, the URJ board passed a resolution, forgive me, I think a year and a half ago. 100%, a unanimous vote at the URJ board to endorse the Jerusalem program of the World Zionist Organization. At one level, that's historic. How many American Reform Jews knew that happened? Well, maybe the families of those people who voted for it.
Right.
No one else knew. The CCAR passed the Miami Platform on Reform Zionism. It is a platform of the Reform Rabbinate. How many Jews know about that? We have to look to contemporary ways to link current American Jews, Gen Xers, millennials, and so forth, with Israel in positive ways for our own time. We're not going to go back to euphoria. We're not going to pass more resolutions and expect them to change the ground on which we're walking. We have to provide positive opportunities of collaboration and partnership to help strengthen the core values of Israeli society. If we can do that, as we are doing that, I believe we will be lowering the temperature of questioning and opposition, and hopefully find social justice partners. Find people who say, yeah, we're not just interested in gender equality in the United States. Boy, here's a chance to help practically work with partners and strengthen that inside Israel. My hope is, our hope, the team, that will create a pro-Zionist, social justice Zionist mood for our time, without any effort to reclaim that which occurred in the past.
Stanley, before we start running out of time, a very tachlis, practical question. There may be a colleague from any denomination who may watch this or listen to this podcast and be inspired by what you're saying, get the book, and they want to do something. What do they do? Who do they call? Say, I'm a congregational rabbi here in the middle of, let's say, Missouri. I want to do something to strengthen this relationship. How do I go about it? Do it? Do they call you? How does that work practically?
Thank you. That's terrific. And I have to acknowledge the core support of the URJ's Israel Committee, doing a fantastic job. Judy Schindler sits on that committee. I do as well. She sits on the committee, and she is chairing this next step, moving from the book into action. And make easy suggestions. I don't have a right to speak for Judy, but I know that she would welcome emails of interest. I'll welcome emails of interest. My email address, RAVDAVIDS, robdavids@gmail. I put it out there. Let me hear. We will take care of moving such indications of interest forward to practical, tachlitic achievements.
So we'll try and put some of that information as well on when we publicize this. One of the other things I should point out with the book is the back of the book, or the second half of the book, are all the essays be'ivrit, in Hebrew. And I think this is a very, very interesting touch to the book on a whole variety of different levels. So it's in Hebrew and English, and the translators are recognized on the top of the book. Last question, again.
Now, forgive me, I was just smiling, because if I could begin to tell you what it took to get an Israeli essay translated, edit the English, translate the edit back to the author. But we have to do that if we mean partnership. Go ahead.
No, that's true. That's true. So here's one of the essays in the back towards the end of the book, and Anat Hoffman and Dr. Adler, Rachel Adler from HUC, talk about this image of pictures. So let me ask you, as we conclude this, what picture do you have, Rabbi Davids, of Israel in the year 2020, 71 years old? What's that picture in your mind?
Picture of Shabbos. We lived there for 12 years, walking the streets of Jerusalem, smelling the smells and hearing the sounds. It's a picture of being at the Yom HaAtzmaut celebration on Har Herzl, the Independence Day celebration on Mount Herzl. and looking around and seeing Israel multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, all gathered with a certain limited exception for some who would not gather to celebrate the reality of a Jewish state. It's to remember that I was 9 years old when Israel was born. My Hebrew school teacher walked into class and held a coin with Hebrew on it. This is a living reversal of 2,000 years of history filled with hope. The dream of a beautiful country with a vision that can transform the world. The goal of Zionism is not concluded with the existence of a Jewish state. The goal of Zionism, social justice Zionism, is to be an Or LaGoyim, a light to the nations, to create a setting in which Jewish values can be seen to transform and uplift human nature. That's my dream. That's what I see. That's what I've been working for all of my life.
That's a great picture to end this conversation. Rabbi Stanley M. Davids, one of the editors, along with Rabbi John Rosove, of Deepening the Dialogue, a new book from the CCAR Press, subtitled Jewish Americans and Israelis Envisioning the Jewish Democratic State. Stanley, thank you very, very much for your time, mostly for your passion. Continue to the what you're doing, and just stay well, good health, and shalom and peace.
And to you, shalom and todah.
Thank you. Todah rabbah. To all of you, thank you for listening again and watching today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. And again, we welcome your comments and suggestions to me, Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. And we invite you to visit our Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page. If you'd like to make a tax-free donation to help support our work, please go to the website, click on the donate button, and it'll take you through the process. Seekers of Meaning is recorded at the studios of Lubetkin Media Companies here in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And we thank our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Thank you. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. I look forward to greeting you again on our next Seekers of Meaning. Shalom.